So 2021's been a bit of an odd year for blackberries. There are some really nice blackberries on the bushes, but the rainfall we've had this year has been, well, we've had almost no rainfall in August and now into September, almost zero rainfall. And as a result, the blackberries have been ripening on the bushes a very long time. So these are the sort of blackberries I've been seeing, and they've ripened without really swelling up. And they're perfectly sound. That is completely ripe, a little bit on the hard side, but just sweet with no acidity at all. So, question I have is, can I pick some of these blackberries and make a blackberry crumble with no added sugar in the fruit layer? Will the sweetness of these blackberries carry through when they're cooked, or will cooking them introduce a bit of acidity? I think it's an interesting experiment. I can always add sugar after it's cooked if that turns out to be a mistake. Let's have a go. Okay, now because this is experimental and I really don't like waste, I'm only going to make a small crumble here. So I've only picked a small bag of blackberries. I should have taken a reusable container with me, but I only had a plastic bag folded up in my wallet. So we're going to put those blackberries straight into a small oven-proof dish. You'll note I'm not washing them. My reason for this? Well, you just see me eating these out in the field, straight off the bushes. Why would I wash them just because I'm at home? Just going to put those in there and just press them down a little bit, just to release some of the juice. There's no sugar going in with the fruit there, just the fruit. Now I need to make a crumble topping, and I am going to stay with the no added sugar vibe here. So I'm going to put in about 1/4 cup of wholemeal flour, just under 1/4 cup of plain white flour, about 1/4 cup of rolled oats. I am kind of eyeballing the amounts here, so there's, I don't know, about 30 grams of butter here, and then just going to use my pastry blender to cut that butter into the flour. We may well find that these blackberries sour up a lot when they're cooked, because they do generally do that anyway, but as they stand at the moment, there is not a hint of sourness in them. And so I think the sugar content in them is quite high. I do have a theory on why it's like that. I think these have ripened really slowly on the bushes, and it's been very, very sunny, hardly any rain at all. And so normally when blackberries ripen, they swell in the last few days of their ripening. They start off green, they turn red, and then they turn black, and then they swell up. And at the point where they've turned black and they start to swell up is when the plant is pumping them full of sugars to make them more appealing to birds who will eat them and carry the seeds off somewhere. That swelling phase on these blackberries has probably been slower just because there's not been much water available to the plants. So I think the plant's still been pumping sugars in there, but just hasn't been able to swell the fruit up to ripen it and make it fall off. So that's my theory anyway. Right, so this crumble mix is just going to go straight on top of those blackberries. Now I don't normally press down crumble, but I'm going to this time. And then I'm just going to break up the top again to make it crumbly. And that's going to go in the oven at 180°C for probably about 25 minutes or so. Okay, well here it is. This is the no added sugar blackberry crumble. I've got to say, it smells a bit savoury. I've let it cool down, that's why I was able to touch it there, because otherwise it would just be like fruity napalm. The custard is sweetened that we're going to have with it, because, I don't know, custard without sugar in it is just liquid sadness. So, anyway, Jenny's going to try this with me. Jenny, you're not constrained to have this without sugar. I've got golden syrup on standby here, so you don't have to be a guinea pig if you don't want to. But you can if you want. Do you want to take some crumble? A bit more than that if you want.
Try it.
Or is it
Always get that.
judging it already, I think, possibly, but I'm going to taste this on its own before I go and put some custard on it. Well, it smells nice and sweet.
Blackberries are okay, but I think the crumble does need a bit of sugar in it.
Oh, it's a bit of bitterness to the blackberries, actually. Not sour, but bitterness. I think that might be where they're just overripe. And of course the crumble, yeah, it tastes like something you'd have on a meat pie.
Mm.
In fact, that'd be quite nice on a meat pie.
Yeah. We do have meat pie
Yeah.
crumbles.
Okay, I'm going to put some custard on there and see if that redeems it. Lots of custard. With the sweetened custard, I think that's perfectly okay. That butter that I used for the crumble is quite salty. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it's definitely better with the custard.
I mean, you've got some golden syrup on there as well, haven't you? So,
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
yeah. So smothered with custard. I mean, Jenny's been a bit more reserved than me on the custard. You can have more than that if you want. I like my custard. So, smothered with custard, it's alright actually. Without that, it just, well, the crumble topping definitely needs sugar. You just can't do that without sugar, I don't think. The blackberries, yeah. Certainly, I think if I'd made that with the blackberries we picked last year, with no sugar, it would have been too sour to eat. It would have been like sour as lemons, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would have been, yeah.
But it's not. So definitely the blackberries this year are different. Well, interesting experiment. Probably not something I'll repeat. Thank you for being my guinea pig, Jenny. Honestly, the nonsense I put you through. So conclusion, those blackberries definitely were sweeter than normal blackberries in a normal year, and probably just because of the unusual weather conditions we've had for this season. And you can make a crumble without any additional sugar in the fruit layer if you use those blackberries, those extra sweet blackberries that have no natural acidity in them at all. They don't turn acid when they're cooked. However, I think probably the benefits of saying no added sugar are probably just a bit illusory, because probably those blackberries have got additional natural sugar in them. So in terms of if you were trying to cook this for a diabetic, you'd still have a fair bit of sugar in that fruit. So it's interesting, but kind of doesn't prove anything except that the fruit is different this year. And I definitely don't recommend making the crumble topping without sugar. However, I think there is still an interesting takeaway here, which is taste your fruit before you make your crumble. If the fruit is particularly sweet, and especially if it lacks acidity, you might be able to add less sugar than your recipe book calls for. I hope that's been interesting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.